It is a pleasure for me to be here today. It seems like we have a very nice live audience with us today. I'm going to take this off. Actually, we can, because it will be recorded, so we can take off the mask now.
Okay.
So it's a pleasure for me to be here today. It's great to see this live audience, and I understand that we have quite a few speakers and attendees, online watching us as well from all the different countries. So it's an honor for me to be here today. So firstly, I'd like to thank the Asia Healthcare Innovation Summit for organizing this event. I'm very excited today. So today, we have a very special panel. Firstly, my name is Andy Liu. I am the moderator today. I'm also president of BaseBit Technologies. BaseBit Technologies is a secure data platform technology company. And in fact, we're also part of the Hong Kong startup ecosystem. BaseBit Technologies last year raised about 350 million Hong Kong dollars for our raise that we closed. And we're also very active in the ecosystem in terms of data collaboration projects. But more importantly, we have an amazing panel with us today. Let me start with my, on the left side. And again, just to let you know here, the group we have today, it would probably take me half an hour each to talk about what they have all accomplished, right? It's a very kind of experienced panel. I'm very lucky to be the moderator here today. On my left is Mr. Stephen Wong. He's the Senior VP of Our Hong Kong Foundation, and he's also a Legislative Council member. And again, if you don't know too much about Our Hong Kong Foundation, you should definitely look it up. It's an amazing organization with amazing people. Next to Stephen is Mr. Dennis Lee, and Dennis is with the Hong Kong Hospital Authority. And I think everyone here who is involved in healthcare will know about Hospital Authority. And more importantly, Dennis is running everything that is related to AI and everything related to data and technologies within Hospital Authority. So a lot of experience, and we're sure we're going to learn a lot from him today. And lastly, we have Mr. Alan Yeung, and I think Alan needs no introduction. He is the former Chief Information Officer for Hong Kong government, the former OGCIO, and he's also the CEO of IGC. So those are our distinguished panelists for today, okay? Now, the topic we're talking about today is data collaboration in healthcare, okay? So just a few quick words before I jump into questions. Why data? Well, we all know that data is going to be the next oil, okay? I can tell everyone today that data, everyone hears about how data is going to be very important, right? But I can tell you that spending time in data in the last few years, the implications of data are far more far-reaching than any of you will imagine. I can tell you that right now, right? Data is going to be very important in the next few years, okay? But how about healthcare data? Well, just a few statistics for everyone, right? 30% of the world's health data is generated by healthcare data, 30%. So of all the data we're talking about worldwide, 30% of it is healthcare data, okay? Secondly, in terms of growth rate, we hear about fintech, we hear about retail and all these other areas. Healthcare is growing faster than all of those. It's growing at about 30%, 36% in terms of healthcare data volume, okay? So we know that there's a tremendous opportunity here in Hong Kong for startups and for healthcare data, and that's the topic we're going to talk about today, okay? So the first question I have is going to be for Stephen, right? Our Hong Kong Foundation has actually published a report. It's called Strategic Collaborations Between Hong Kong and Shenzhen in Biotechnology. It's downloadable by PDF in English and Chinese. It's an amazing, very comprehensive report that you guys should all take a look at. So Stephen, tell us a little bit more about our Hong Kong Foundation and tell us kind of the top 2 opportunities you see in healthcare data collaboration for startups according to this report and your experience.
Thank you. Our Hong Kong Foundation is a think tank that we basically push for policy changes that is strategic and facilitate more innovations and the general growth in the society in social and economic aspect. But in that report particularly, we work with two other think tanks, one in Beijing and one in Shenzhen, because we thought that the cross-border opportunities, especially for biotech, is important. So without actually think through the policy that can be coordinated from the central government perspective as well as our neighbor city perspective, we cannot really exhibit the potential or release the potential of the biotech growth. Now, I want to talk about the data collaboration opportunities from two aspects. One is from a quality aspect, and one is from the quantity aspect. The quality aspects, I think a lot of people already know is that, for example, our clinical trial data, right, are often recognized concurrently from the US FDA, EU, EMA, and China MMPA. And potentially, hopefully, we can sort of export our standard or protocol or experiences internationally to sell the international market, where we can actually have these sort of standards when we go into the mainland, where actually there are a lot more data to access. We can sort of export our protocol, our international standard, as we sort of expand our footprint in mainland. From a quantity perspective, obviously there are sort of government-to-government data collaboration. Especially there is so-called 16 policy measures that is announced in 2019 that actually allow Hong Kong, designated Hong Kong institutions with branches in the mainland to get mainland human genetic resources for users. So, I think the opportunity here is that, well, aside from these 16 policy measures, are there other things that we can think of that can potentially allow us to get access to the genetic resources? For example, not just for Hong Kong institutions that have branches in Shenzhen, but can these designated institutions in Hong Kong can get those resources in Hong Kong, or if not in the entire Hong Kong, but with those designated institutions, can they use those resources, let's say within the loop, with the Hong Kong, with the Hong Kong area. So as you know, the loop, we have the Shenzhen part, and then you have the Hong Kong part. Can these designated Hong Kong institutions within the loop can get those genetic resources that will obviously allow us to, exercise our basic research expertise, as well as I said, the clinical trial recognized protocol, internationally, have a bit more data to play with, basically.
No, thank you very much. It's very interesting. It seems like there's a lot of opportunity in the Greater Bay Area. It's not just Hong Kong. It's going to be much bigger than that, as Stephen has alluded, right? Thank you, Stephen. My next question is for Dennis, right? Again, Hospital Authority has been a leader in technology, AI, and they've been doing so many innovative projects in the last several years, right? Maybe Dennis, can you share with the group here a little bit about Hong Kong Hospital Authority's data assets? What does Hong Kong Hospital Authority currently have? And maybe share a few of the important AI and data projects that HA is doing today, and why you think these projects are important for Hong Kong.
Thank you, Andy. I think there are a few questions from your questions there. But before I jump into the answers, maybe I give you some context of data collaborations. Basically, the pandemic, COVID-19, has driven not just HA, but the whole healthcare industry to basically able to open up their mind to basically share data. So the more research you have, basically the more innovations you have based on the same data set. So actually, in a few years back, HA, not just IT itself, has a business strategy to basically leverage, to harness those data we have captured in our systems and able to use those to innovate and also work with the ecosystems to devise those innovations. So the key things to HA is the business strategy drive all the innovations. And in HA, just give you some context. HA have 43 hospitals in Hong Kong and manage basically 90% of the inpatient service. So if Andy just mentioned, healthcare data is growing, but actually, same thing. HA data is growing in the speed of millions per day. So for this managing of 90% of inpatient data, we have 25 years of data sitting in HA. And then a lot of pain points about data collaboration is data standardizations. Now, HA in 25 years ago already has a system called CMS, it's homegrown system. We developed homegrown system used by all hospitals. And that's set the foundation to all the data capture, all the digital clinical notes, demographics. Even recently, not actually recently, in 10 to 15 years ago, we implemented a FilmNest project, which captured all the imagings as well, CT, chest X-ray, etc. So all these data actually becomes the treasure of basically a starting point of all these innovation, big data innovations, and is importantly, is standardized across all hospitals. So that is already, you start already halfway there in terms of data preparations. So that's the answer for your, mass, data sets in HA. So because of this data set, probably 4 years ago, based on the Hong Kong smart city footprint, we have drive some of the collaboration with universities. We set up something called the Data Collaboration Lab, which work closely with the 8 local universities. We have about 5 billion record of this data and provide as a master data set for these universities to harness their researchers. So that's one thing about 4 years ago. And then recently, in about 2 years ago, we set up something called AI Lab. So this AI Lab is basically support research side, and AI Lab is support that apply research that apply to the HA service, that find opportunity to improve HA service. As you are aware in the news, that we are shortage of doctors and lots of Asian population will have a high demand on healthcare. So the 2 examples I can quote is one is the chest X-ray. We have about 1 million chest X-ray per annum, just the examination. To actually review all these is actually take time, right? So we use AI technology, image AI, to prioritize this high-risk patient. It look at different disease and basically prioritize for the condition to report first. Ultimately, all these will be reported, but it's a prioritization. So we prioritize those high risk first so that they can take care of those high risk patients in the first glance. Secondly, we use NLP AI to basically imagine there are a lot of lab tests that report in the hospital authority. Those lab report return in a TESTO format. So we use AI to basically read those information and automatically update the CMS system and book for the follow-ups, and then you expedite all these follow-up incidents. And also, it also potentially reduce some of the patient risk. So these are the few things that we develop in AI Lab to support HA service. So in the future, because I think that those like automation, decision support will be really important to basically support HA to sustain the healthcare service to the Hong Kong citizens.
Thank you so much, Dennis. And again, you heard what Dennis said, and I've been in this industry for a long time, looking at data across all parts of the world. Hong Kong has, under HA, 25 years of longitudinal data, right? That is just amazing. And the fact that they're actually doing kind of data collaboration lab with universities and now setting up AI lab, that's definitely leaders in the healthcare industry globally. Thank you, Dennis. So my next question is for Alan, right? As former CIO for the government of Hong Kong, you have a lot of experience in big data, smart city, healthcare, cybersecurity, and more, right? Tell us a little bit about IGC, and tell us kind of 2 of the most significant data collaboration efforts that are important for Hong Kong.
Okay, thanks for your introduction. As you mentioned, I was the former government CIO. During my term, aside from doing digital government, I also was responsible for charting out and rolling out the first smart city blueprint. We call it as 1.0. And under smart living, smart hospital, smart healthcare is among those that we are advocating. So after I left the government, I set up IGC. It is also set up to participate one of the smart city initiatives with a focus on making buildings smart. Again, data is the most important part of connecting all the dots and making it the most valuable change or transformation for managing a building. So coming back to today's focus on healthcare, as you know, the Financial Secretary has set up a Digital Economy Development Committee earlier this year in his budget speech. And the committee has formally convened in July, and I'm one of the committee members. And I'm also designated to be in charge of a subcommittee which focus on cross-border data collaboration. And that means we are having in mind that Hong Kong within ourselves has not sitting with huge data. But Hong Kong has opportunity to connect our country's, mainland China's data and the rest of the world. And Hong Kong has been playing that kind of role connecting East and West. But this time, we're looking at how we can connect data between the two sides. And the backdrop of data in terms of mobility would drive a lot of innovations. Nonetheless, there are regulations that prohibit free flow of data for consideration of privacy protection, for consideration of national security and others. So we must find a way to live within those constraints. So the first thing that we want to do is make Hong Kong a special a place for mainland China's data to come to Hong Kong easier than the other countries. And we are now focusing on developing those kind of measures and in discussion with mainland authorities of giving Hong Kong that particular special policy. But you may ask, why should we even want to do that? Let's think about healthcare, for example. A lot of companies in Hong Kong are doing business in mainland. And people as well, we are also traveling. And if our own healthcare record, let's say we got an accident in Shenzhen and got into a hospital, we need to access to our own personal record and vice versa when we come back. And so for GBA 1 hour living circle, we need to have a way to share our own medical information to take care of our own healthcare. Number two, there's a lot of research data that reside in different locations. Hong Kong has Hospital Authority CMS system, which has very good information to start with, but still confined to Hong Kong's 7 million population. But in mainland China, there is one of the hospitals is doing hundreds of operations, and they accumulate far more data than Hong Kong. For a research perspective, you want to be access to those kind of information, to those kinds of data, to create that kind of innovation. You know, you can draw a correlation to the quantity of data would drive the number of innovation. So the more data would drive more innovation. So we would like to kick that off and make that happen. So with that committee, we are now actively making cross-border, at least within GPA, a possibility, a reality.
Great. Thank you very much, Alan. Again, it's wonderful to see that you're still involved in these very important, committees and policy decision makings, which is going to have an impact for everybody, right? Now, I know we're running short on time, but I'd like to try to spend a few more minutes to get one more question through, right? And again, there's so much experience here. This is really just to kick off the stimulation for a lot of the startup companies. So my last question, quickly, for each of you is this, right? You guys are all involved in very important organizations, right? Can you maybe give one or two comments to these startup companies and people here are hearing? How do they get involved with your organization, right? What are some of the things that they can do? And by the way, I encourage everyone to definitely reach out to IGC, HA, and to our Hong Kong Foundation. But a few advice for these participants on how they can be involved with your organization and what they should focus on. Yeah.
Well, we always reach out to startups really to learn from them as to what are the pain points in policies, in terms of data, cross sectors, health and social, for example, cross-border, GBA, for example, private and government, for example. I think these are things that, as policy think tank, we love to learn more about the pain points so that we can help to work together to overcome these pain points by facilitation of the government policies.
Great. Thank you very much. Dennis?
Yeah, maybe I can add on. So in the past, actually, HA do not, work with ecosystem so much. But recently, because of disruption, etc., and we do actually set up an innovation lab, including AI, IoT, etc. So I mean, the key thing to start up is we actually do have a lot of pain points in healthcare. So if that pain point actually is actually normally it's big enough because we have 43 hospitals, right? If one hospital has this problem, 43 likely to have those. So if we actually able to find a solution, address one of the key pain points in hospital, we definitely would like to try because we now set up something called innovation funnel, which somewhat in the sense that we allow things to try, and if it doesn't work, then we try something else. So I think this is a good channel that we can work with the ecosystem. It's actually quite available now. You can submit your solution, and then we basically will actually actively review those solutions, how to address the HA service issue, basically.
Great. Thank you very much, Dennis. Alan?
Yes, aside from setting up IGC, after I left the government, I also set up a NGO, Institute of Big Data Governance. And the institute is actually trying to establish a big data governance structure and infrastructure, so a framework. So Hong Kong can have a good foundation to build ourselves as a very good data governance standard on par with the rest of the world. So I would encourage everyone who are engaged in big data work to work with us to define that industry self-governance structure. And we can build Hong Kong as a very high big data governance in terms of credibility and trust. And with that, we can be, if we want to build ourselves as a international data hub, that is a very important part to be equip ourselves with.
Thank you, Alan. And the last minute here, I'll answer that question as well, right? BaseBit Technologies is heavily involved in data collaboration. Feel free to connect with me as well. We're involved in a lot of healthcare related as well as finance and other industries as well. You can find me on Andy Liu on LinkedIn. I'm happy to connect you to any of the panel members or any of the other data collaboration efforts that we're looking at. And you want to find out more about secure data platform technologies, feel free to talk to our colleagues as well. But it's a pleasure to have everyone here today. This is really a special panel because you have the Hong Kong technology expert, the expert from hospital authority, and the expert from a policy perspective, right? All sitting together on a panel together, sharing their thoughts. And this also shows, more importantly, that Hong Kong has changed, right? We're no longer working in silos. Data is about working together, and this is a perfect example where all these very different experts are sitting together in a panel, together with myself, a startup company, to figure out how we can work together. So thank you very much for your time today.